Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Between Sundays. We are so excited that you've taken time to, wherever you're listening, you've taken time to listen to this episode. And Pastor, it feels like it's been a minute since we've been in this space recording an episode of Between Sundays.
Yeah, we kind of get them lined up like an airport, and just start taking one at a time. And then there's a little break, and then it's just always good to be back and having great conversations.
Yeah, we had several episodes there. I mean, way back. It seems like, feels like forever ago in Family Month, where we were doing like back to back to back. And then we had a few that had, like you said, had kind of piled up there, and we've been releasing those. And so it's great to be back with you.
It really is. And I really hope our prayers that we are ministering to our family, our church family. Again, we want to make a big difference in their life. And Between Sundays, I do pray it's helpful, not just true, not just informative. We want it to be helpful.
Yeah. So tell me something, just catching up, what's something new that's been going on in your world?
Oh, Brother Billy. I mean, we can't even begin to do that. We're so deep.
Just one thing. Just
one thing. I spent all day today painting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So probably until about an hour ago. Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
If you saw me, you think this guy just came straight from Home Depot.
I don't even see any paint on your hands.
Yeah, well, hey, you clean up pretty well, but yeah, painting all day.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we're excited about
But I will tell you this about painting, okay? It's one thing I can do that it totally takes my mind off anything else.
Yeah.
And it's like an oasis, like a spa.
Okay.
Honestly, because I don't have to think about anything. My mind is totally focused.
I didn't know that.
It's almost a break.
I didn't. I knew you were good at painting. I didn't realize it was like therapeutic for you.
Yeah, because you don't have to think about anything else.
Some guys would say that's like mowing the grass for them.
Absolutely.
Is it the same? Do you like mowing the grass
or golf? Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
I don't know if I would put mowing the grass in golf. Yeah. And golf, it can be therapeutic depending on how you're playing, right?
No question.
Well, the people did not tune in to listen to you and I talk about painting,
absolutely.
golf. And
we could do this off.
But today's episode's really exciting. We have an international guest with us today. So I won't even, you have to understand, Pastor Zuniga is the introduction extraordinaire. I say it's one of his spiritual gifts. If there was a 10th gift of the Spirit, are there not? There's 9, right? There's 9 spiritual gifts. I need to make sure. I need to fact check that. This would be the 10th. If there's not, okay, there's more. How many are there?
I have no idea. But
okay.
I know there's,
but there's more than
that's right.
This is one extra one on top of all of the gifts of the Spirit. Is introducing guests. So I'm going to throw it to you to introduce our guest.
Thank you. This is really special to me. It is really an honor to have with us Greg Hackathorn, all the way from Sydney, Australia. And what an incredible leader he is. A few years ago, we had the privilege, Julie and I, to go and minister in Sydney, Australia. And we got to meet this fantastic couple and his wife, Stephanie. They have 3 beautiful children, Ava, Levi, and Reagan. And we fell in love with them. Their heart for God, their heart for the church, their heart for people, their heart for the kingdom of God was just so inspiring. And we just connected and had great conversations. And we were been blessed by their relationship and friendship. And then they were coming here to the States for a missions conference. He's a church planner as well. And so a church flew them and their family in. And they decided they would like to come to Nashville, specifically Goodlettsville, to be with us.
That's
and Greg, this is really a personal thing for me, but thank you for being here.
Oh, it's an absolute privilege to be here and a blessing to be with you guys. And it's so cool to be sitting at the table and to be a part of a conversation that I listened to. I was talking to you guys just before we started recording. I'm a listener. I'm a frequent listener. I love your banter. So I know you keep it tight, but you don't have to keep it tight. I think you could extend it by a few minutes, but I love it when you guys go back and forth, and it's a privilege for me to be with you. And obviously our relationship with the Zunigas is just such a highlight for Stephanie and I.
That's cool. And I don't know if you mentioned this, I may have missed it, but he has a podcast as well.
Great podcast, yeah.
Can you tell us just a little bit about the podcast that you do?
So I have a podcast called the Hacka Podcast, and some people jokingly think that it might be related to New Zealand, the haka. Oh. They have the spiritual warfare dance that they've got there. But no, it's
Can
haka.
You do that? Can you do that
I cannot, and if I did, I think they'd be offended. I'm not sure. But I've seen it done very well at weddings and different things like that. But so it's Haka, like a nickname of mine in Australia. And basically, it's just a podcast about Apostolic Pentecostals. We talk about leadership. We talk about ministry. We talk about mental health. We talk about all different kinds of things, music, basically anything that interests me, or if I have a fascinating guest, to get into what they have an expertise in. So it actually is a little far-reaching in what we cover, but I find it fun, and been doing it about just over 4 years now. So
it's amazing. You have a lot of great guests on there. I think the last time I looked, you're a little over 200 episodes in. Is that right?
yeah, we just crossed 200 this year.
It's amazing.
And it's been a journey. I was doing it weekly for a long time, but because of some life decisions in the last year or so, I had to scale that back a bit. But it's been good. I've really gotten a lot out of it, and especially when I got started, I was involved in ministry. I was involved in the local church. I was busy, but not overly busy. And it was some sort of a release that I could have, and it was a way that basically the reason I started it was to kind of what you guys were just referring to before we pressed record, is allowing people into conversations that I was privileged to be a part of, simply because of a role that I had in the church. You know, having relationships with guest speakers or people who came through and sitting at the table, listening to them speak, and being part of these conversations and trying to connect the congregation to that, or the wider church body. And also, I just saw a need for entertainment, and wholesome entertainment for people. You know, not every conversation has to have a deep move of God in it. Some of it can just be sort of entertaining and help people to learn and to grow. And I felt like we need to fill that space during the week, which is amazing. The title of your podcast. So.
Well, it's cool, and it's cool to be with a fellow podcaster.
My mate.
I'm
not there yet. Okay.
I'm gonna be straight up.
Sure.
I committed to not use any Australian dialect.
No down under, nothing like that.
No,
Okay.
I'm not doing it.
We're backing away.
If I do it, you guys have permission to tell me to stop. Okay.
Sure.
All right, I have to ask you a question just about Australia. This is personal. This isn't in the show notes. So my wife and I would love at some point to travel to Australia. That's not like a little.
What else would you call it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying if the offer's there. This will be the second time I've mentioned that. But my wife, and we'll probably talk about this later at dinner. She has this extreme phobia of spiders, and so every time she does research on travel to Australia, it's all about these gigantic spiders. So this is for me. Can you just talk us off the ledge on these giant spiders in Australia?
They're everywhere.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. If you come to Sydney, you will not see one. And you may see a giant spider. Those are actually harmless. The ones that are in Sydney, they're called huntsmans, and they're not going to do anything to you. They just look scary. Yeah. But the ones that are scary, spiders, snakes, and all of that, most of that is found up in Queensland, in the tropical areas up there. Yeah. And if you see like videos trending on social media of people finding carpet pythons in the ceiling or behind fridges, or seeing these huge, I think I saw one where like they killed a spider and like thousands of spiders come out of it.
Oh,
That's the stuff I'm talking about, man.
Wow. Yeah.
Those all happen in Queensland.
Yeah.
So stay south, stay in New South Wales, stay where God's at in Sydney. And you'll be fine.
But that huntsman spider is no joke, though.
No,
like it's
they look
intimidating.
scary. Yeah. It's as big as your hand. I remember. So when I first moved there, my wife and their family were living right off. They call it bushlands, which is basically like the woods, what we would say here. But in Australia, they call it bushlands, and it was just right off the bush. And these little creatures would come through. They'd get a blue-tongued lizard underneath their porch, and spiders would be on the outside of the house, like on the window. You'd wake up and you see this big old spider. It'd freak you out, but like my wife can move it with just a piece of paper and take it out. Another interesting fact is, you could look at this up, but almost no one dies from a bite from a snake or a spider in Australia. It's extremely rare, even though we have so many deadly snakes and spiders. And it just goes to show, if you scare people enough, they'll stay away from these things.
I just like to note, the producer, Austin, our producer extraordinary, just leaned over and he said almost no one. Which means
someone has. Yeah.
Well, we better get into the real stuff. I mean, we're helping people. We're
really
already
are.
helping people.
Yeah, they may want to go to Australia, and they need to know this stuff.
Yeah. Well, as we were setting this up, we asked Greg just for some specific things. We always like to ask our guests, what do you want to talk about? Like, what are you feeling passionate about? and he shot like 72 things back, that he's excited about. No, he really drilled down into 3 things, and that's what we're going to talk about. So, Pastor, why don't you just lead us in this conversation?
Yeah, so let me just set the table here. Greg, you are part of a ministerial team in a great church. If you've never heard of the Pentecostals of Sydney, you need to go YouTube that because they are fantastic. You guys do so many things well, and those of us that have been privileged to be there, to get really a courtside seat of this, it really is impressive. Just the ministry, the environment, the culture you guys have created, and so grateful for that. And so you guys, again, just God is blessing you guys. You guys are growing. You guys do 2 Sunday morning services back to back. I know you guys have tea in the middle, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So you have a little break for tea.
Yes.
What do you officially call that?
We call it morning tea.
Morning tea. Okay,
Yeah.
so you have morning tea between 2 services, but then that's not it. That's not over for you. You guys get in your car, you take your family, and you guys drive about an hour and a half,
That's right, yeah.
An hour and a half into another church that you're the pastor, you're the campus pastor, so you started that church an hour and a half away. Sundays is just packed for you guys. And I remember when you were telling me this, I think, man, Greg, you are doing so much for the kingdom of God. But you deal with teams. You deal with a whole group of people that are helping leading not just your church that you're starting, but the big church there in Sydney. And so we are curious about that too. Like that is very important to us. So when you think about building a team in the ministry context, okay, just church context, what's the first principle that just comes to your mind?
When it comes to building a team, I guess you kind of would look at skill. You'd be interested in, do they have the skills? Do they have the ability to do that? And ultimately, a lot of people have those, and if they're working in that ministry, in that area already, they are skilled. There's a lot of talent in the church, especially if you get in a larger church, you're going to have a lot of talented people, a lot of people who are able to do things. They might have unique giftings as well. You look at that. But for me, I guess the number one thing that I look at is faithfulness. Are they going to be willing to stick through it? Are they going to be committed? Are they going to show up on time? Are they going to be ready and willing to do the work? And you can measure that in a number of ways. You can see that in the way that they live. If they're in a, and you guys all know this, you're involved in church work. But I would say that's the number one thing that I look at, because you can always teach skill. You can upskill people. Now, some people have unique talents and giftings, and you need to take advantage of that as best you can, plug them in the right areas so they're helping the church in the best way that they possibly can. I mean, I've been able to build teams where it's gone far beyond where I started it because of the unique skills and abilities that the people brought to the team that I didn't have. Some people look at our socials and they know that my name is kind of like involved in the Pentecostal of Sydney socials, but I almost do none of the work now. Years ago, I did a lot of it, but now I'm kind of just like the yes man, the okay man, the last, if there's any issues, they could say, oh, Greg approved that. and Pastor could talk to me about it. But we have a whole bunch of people with skill and ability that actually produce that stuff, that put that stuff out. But they can have all that skill, they can have all that ability, but if they're not faithful, if you told them, hey, you need to put a couple posts out this week, and they don't regularly do that, then I mean, what's the point of building that? That team's going to fall apart. So, to me, faithfulness is so important, so important.
Yeah, again, just so people that don't know you get to know a little bit more about you. For most of us here in North America, you serve in a role similar to like an executive pastor. You're an administrative genius. You help in a lot of things, just organizing, setting things, creating culture, all of that. So you deal with a lot of volunteers, and the church rides on the back of volunteers. That's a given. And so when I look at this, how do you balance like empowering volunteers, like you're really trying to pull out their giftedness, really empowering them to do, but yet realizing you don't want to overload them as well. Mm-hmm. Like that's where a lot of people run into, in my mind, is that, you want to empower them, and then, again, you can get people where they feel this is too much. Like I've bit off more than I can chew. How do you guys handle that?
Man, that is a challenge. And I think the last number of years has helped me see that in a whole different way, because I came into, I grew up in church, right? But I was young by the time I moved to Australia. And then I came on staff as basically an intern, and then into an administrative type role in 2010. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I was very young. But I've always been working with a larger church. We had a large volunteer base, and so you could sort of build out those teams. You can work through that, right? You can try and keep your volunteers from getting too taxed because you can have more volunteers. You can develop your team more. But the last couple of years with the church plant, I've had to see it from a different light because you have less volunteers. You're using pretty much the same people every week for the most part. And so I think there's challenges on both ends. If you're a smaller work, you don't want to overburden the people that are there, that are faithful, that are serving, that are helping the church happen. But who else do you have, right? So you have to try and inspire them, encourage them, and help them see what you see. Help them see the vision. Help them see where we're going. You're working hard now, but you're not always going to be the hardest worker, right? We're gonna build this to a place where you will be part of a team. You may even be leading that team because you've been here for so long, and you're not always going to be the one doing everything. And so helping them see that, this is not something that's going to be forever, but this is something that we're building towards, we're working towards. And then in a larger church, I think you have to help people see what you're doing, right? So what are we working towards? Why are you doing what you're doing? Let's explain. Let's give you context. Let's explain why we're doing it this way. Why do we have 4 camera operators? We could have 2. We could have 1, and still get a product out that's going to, I guess, meet the needs as far as especially the preaching of the word. You don't really need a whole lot of cameras for that. But why do we have 4? And explain that. Why do we? And then if you inspire the people who are at the base level, then they can recruit more volunteers. They can expand the team. This is in a larger church.
Yeah, for sure.
And you can build that out, and that really helps with burnout. If you have a larger team, you can rotate people through. Yeah. And I think also you have to, as a leader, you have to get to a point where everything doesn't have to be perfect, right? We're not Hollywood. We're not running a show every week. It doesn't have to be perfect. We want it to be good. We want it to be the best that we can do that Sunday. But if we accept the fact that it's not going to be perfect, then we can rotate through volunteers, and we can have some weaker volunteers that are going to be there filling roles and keeping those strong ones from burnout.
Yeah, a great thought, because honestly, we use a phrase around here that the church should be a safe place to fail. I mean, you don't have to be perfect. We want you to do your best. We want you to work hard and try, but sometimes you're learning and you're figuring things out. And so, but we want you to keep trying, and there's grace to do that. We don't want to shame you. We don't want to put you down. We want you to keep giving us your best and giving God your best. You have a context of American. You're born in Kansas City, right?
That's right. Yep. Go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs. Yeah. Well, whatever.
My son is going to love you. Oh my God.
Yeah. Do we have to? Can we edit that out? I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Anyways,
why would we do that? Why would we edit that out?
This is a family-friendly podcast, okay? We're very, very careful what we talk about.
A Chargers fan.
Yeah, now we're talking the glory of the Lord. But you have the context of now working in Sydney. And is there anything that, I'm just curious, is there anything that is different in that context, in that culture, than in North America?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think, though, I'd have to also give this caveat that I moved young, right? So I was involved in church to a very minor degree. I was a young person. And then I went to Bible school for a year and a half. So I saw it from that perspective. But as an adult in ministry and all of it has been in Australia. So a lot of the way I would view America is through the lens of somebody else, someone else that I've talked to about ministry, how they're doing it and so on. So I might not be the best person to talk about big differences when it comes to church ministry, when it comes to that sort of thing, because I haven't really had that hands-on experience with it. Like, I haven't really even seen a whole lot of American services like in operation from the back end, right? You can sit in and see it, but when you're in the back end and you're dealing with the volunteers and you're having those conversations that happen during the service, you see it completely different than you would if you're just in the congregation experiencing the worship service. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're stating that as clear as you can, meaning that most of your ministry experience is in Australia, right? And so I can totally see that. But it is different cultures. And so just trying to figure out if there was some nuance that you detected, picked up, or whatever, even if you saw services online.
One of the things that I notice, you're just driving around in a place like Nashville, right?
Yeah.
There's churches everywhere.
Yeah.
You guys have
yeah.
such stiff competition. In Australia, we don't really have that much. This is a more European type environment we're dealing with. It's very secular.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you look at our congregation in Sydney, it's growing. It's amazing. But a lot of those are migrants, immigrants that have come to Australia. Not a lot of them are Australian born, or if they have been, they're first generation Australians. Their parents migrated to Australia. So I would say, the competition here is fierce. And so you see things that, like, I'll look in the outside and be like, why did they do that? Like, why are they investing so much in there? And then I realize, oh yeah, because they have all these other churches and they're just trying to get people into the front door. And so there's this seeker friendly focus that has been the case for a number of years in the American church that may not necessarily be there in Australia. Like, you've been to POS.
Yeah.
Our parking is terrible. Our parking is horrible. The church is cramped, but we still fill it up each and every week because there's an experience that you can't get anywhere else in Sydney, in my opinion. And so we don't have to spend that much money. We don't have to spend so much effort on just getting people into the door like you would have to in America. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
For sure, yeah. And this is the Bible Belt. There's churches everywhere. To think that, one of our you have a marketing strategy for your church. This isn't a business, but we have there's marketing strategies that you come up with. You invest marketing dollars into Google ads for your church. That's a wild conversation, talking about things that you do here. You don't have to do it. It's just
you should do it though if you're being wise. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to drill back into a little bit of the volunteer thing because I think you're a valuable voice on this. We talk a lot about team building, and then even within building, developing teams. Seeing people where they start, and then watching them grow. But another thing that we really are trying more and more and more to hone in on is not just their doing, but their being. About who they're becoming. Not just in their ability, their skill set, but their health. We're very blessed. We have like over 200 volunteers in our planning center database of people who serve here, which is amazing. It's a tremendous blessing. And there are some people who serve in multiple different ministries. So at times we, trying to keep a pulse on where people are at health-wise, whether that's spiritually, just their involvement. You mentioned burnout earlier. So this is kind of a two-part question. Number one, as leaders, what should we be paying attention to with our volunteers? How do we keep a pulse on that? And then for those who are volunteers in our church who may be listening, what's their responsibility to staying healthy as a volunteer in a church?
Yeah, I think one of the things from a volunteer's perspective is you need to remember why you're doing it. Like why are you involved? Are you just doing it because you think photography is good? It's fun. And so this is why I'm doing it, or because I have a good voice and I want people to hear me sing. That's why I'm. So if you understand why you're doing it, keep that as the focus.
Yeah, I
think you're going to do well. I think also as a leader, trying to understand our volunteers' capacity, like where they're at, and that's very difficult. Mm-hmm. It's easy to say that. It's a lot harder to work through that, right? I have a very high capacity, and so it's a challenge for me when people use the word burnout. And I'm doing as much as I am. Like, okay, you're single. You have no responsibilities.
Hey, listen.
You have one job.
You're here, bro. And your people are probably not listening to this, so just let it out.
Yeah, okay? just tell us how you really feel. Yeah.
And so like the burnout word, I think I'm going to be a little bit controversial. I think it's a little bit overused.
Sure.
I think some of it is just maybe it's a lack of focus on your spirituality. And so because of that, it's leading you to what you're calling burnout, but it could really just be that
so good.
You haven't focused on your relationship with God. And so it's good. Like, oh, I'm burnt out because I operated a camera twice this month. It's like, I don't think that's burnout. I think that's just, you're not paying attention to your personal relationship with God. And so then when you're adding on these other things, you're pointing to that as the problem, but the problem is actually over here. As a leader, I think that's hard for us to manage because you're having to, like, how do you know everyone's personal walk? right?
Yeah.
You can encourage them. You can talk about the importance of it. I think that's important. Keep that to the forefront. Challenge them, but it is a challenge, that how are we supposed to know, right? Even Pastor Zuniga with his tight leadership team, I bet it's a challenge even to know all of your top leaders exactly where they're at in their spiritual walk. How much more, someone who is over a greeting team that has 40 people on it.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to know where they're at spiritually? How are you supposed to know when they need to be rostered off?
And I would say, not to interrupt you, but this fits so perfectly into the conversation of team building, because as your ministry, your volunteer team, your ministry team grows, even within those teams, because the same concept that a senior pastor is not going to be able to keep a solid pulse on every single volunteer, so he develops teams under him to do that. Well, those teams underneath, if you've got a first impressions ministry or a greeter team that's got 40 people, it may be time to segment that up into, multiple for the sake of volunteer health. And I think that's why this conversation is so important. I know this probably feels selfish, to have this as us as leaders sitting here talking, because you say this all the time. This church does not operate unless we have churches are built on the back of volunteers. But also sometimes the back of volunteers are broken because of the load that at times that they carry without a true sense of health, and I think that's why we should be very in tune with the health of our volunteers, where it's not just about the first time. Somebody even said this one time. They said, if you're going to call and ask a volunteer to do something and you haven't called them to ask them how they're doing, you need to not ask them to do anything before you ask them how they're doing. You need to have some health checkups from time to time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And again, I appreciate the conscientiousness about being sensitive to the health of our volunteers. If you're a volunteer, it matters. It's not just what you do, it's how you are doing. Because again, there's no longevity if you're burning out and you're wiping out and then all of a sudden,
Right.
you're non-existent. That no one wins that way. It's when we stay healthy, like Carrie Newhoff, lead in a way today that you can show up tomorrow. And so us being aware of our teams and aware of the volunteers is so important. And I know there's different ways. There's tools that help us. I would use that tool where you are like under-challenged, adequately challenged, deadly over-challenged.
Yeah.
Again, I think that's a great tool to just decipher where people are. But it is important that we have great volunteers that are faithful, that are committed, that are using their skill sets or abilities to further the kingdom of God. Thank you for doing that. If you're a volunteer, again, heaven is going to be great because you are doing what the Bible asks us to do, and that is to serve the kingdom of God. Greg, you've served in a lot of different capacities, but this last leg or this recent leg, let me use that word, this recent leg of you starting a church. And just really curious. It's not like you needed something else to do. It was not like you are just twiddling your thumb sitting around. You got more to do than you need to do. And but you are a high capacity leader. God spoke to you. Obviously, there was something that just, God, I got to try this. You went through the right channel. So the question I want to ask is this: what has been the hardest leadership lesson you've learned through this process? And just to be clear, I don't think I could start a church, okay? God didn't call me to start a church. That's a really, really tough skill set. It's a calling. There's no doubt about it in my mind. What is some of the hardest lessons you've learned in that?
One of the hardest lessons, I guess, would be, I think if you ask any church planter this, it would be to beware of false expectations. Like, you come into this and you feel the passion, you feel the drive, God's called you, you're under spiritual authority, you've been sent, right? I'm not just going, but I've been sent by my pastor. And so, and by God. And so you have this expectation that the church is just going to fill up. Like if we have our preview services, if we do it, if we follow this model, if you follow this, and as an administrative kind of guy, I'm a systems guy. And so if I find the perfect system, that's going to make it happen. And I know I didn't totally believe that, but I think a part of me thought that maybe that would work, that if just out of a perfect system, the church would just magically grow, And I think sometimes that's one of the hardest lessons to learn. I think in any type of ministry, not just in church planning, having false expectations, thinking that something's just going to develop, or something's just going to happen, or you think something's going to go away just because God gave you the directive, God spoke to you, and so it's going to happen. And that's not the case. It's still going to require work. It's still going to require effort. And all churches grow differently, All churches have a different character. I mean, this church has grown different to another church down the road. Mm-hmm. And some of it has to do with the leadership. Some of it has to do with just the congregation. But each church is different. Each church is going to grow differently. And so I think coming into a space with false expectations and making sure that you don't compare yourself with others. I was very wary of that, and I didn't make a mistake there. I knew that going in. My context is completely different. I have a lot of other church planners I look at. You just had one on recently that I follow quite well with Stello and the Vessel Church, Taylor Fairbanks, and some of these other guys who've gone out and started works. I follow what they do and their processes and what they're doing and celebrate with them when they have wins. But I also have to understand my context. My context is not Baton Rouge. My context is not North Carolina. It's not Tennessee. It's not Missouri. Sure. It's New South Wales, Australia. And it's like where we're at is in the Central Coast. And it's a beach town. It's a retirement area. And so people are there to chill, right? And if you try and call them out on a Sunday, that's not necessarily where their focus is. And so you have to understand your context. You have to understand who you're reaching, and then understand that when you bring it to the table, and trust God. Continue to do what you know to do. Build that team as we talked about, but trust God with the process.
Yeah. How did you, as you just started on that journey, because you've been at POS for a while now, right? Like several years before you launched into this. So what was some of the first steps that you took as you started into this church planner journey?
So in 2022, we felt the call to start a work there. There's this, I might get into this a little bit tomorrow, but there's this stretch from Sydney to Gold Coast. And Pastor Zuniga is well aware of, because he's been on either end. He's been in Sydney, he's been in Brisbane, which is just north of the Gold Coast. But there's a stretch of about 9 hours where there's only one apostolic church. And there's a whole number of large towns there. I'm talking anywhere from 40,000 all the way up to 300,000. Wow. And we don't have apostolic churches there. Wow. Never had apostolic churches there. One of them we did, and then it had to close down after a year or so. The work that we have in Newcastle, that's been on and off for a number of years, and it's going right now, which is good. But there's a whole number of other cities that don't have apostolic churches. And the Central Coast is the area. The town that we're in is Gosford, which is about 150,000 people. The whole surrounding area is about 300,000. An hour and a half, just an hour actually, north of Sydney, if you go to the northern part of Sydney. And we'd never had an apostolic church there.
Wow.
We've had missionaries there since the 50s. And for whatever reason, we just never got to that area. Maybe they thought people would just come down. I'm not sure. But for whatever reason, we had never been there. And in 2022, we're driving through all these towns, and I'm just like, man, we need to have a church here. We need to have a church here. And we get closer and closer to Sydney, and it's just like the weight is there. It's like, well, this is drivable. I don't have to move. I have Sunday evenings off, right? At that point, we had our multiple services in the morning, and then 1:00, you're done for the rest of the day. I'm literally sitting on the couch for the rest of Sunday, and just hanging out with my family, which is nice. It's nice to relax and do that sort of thing. But I'm thinking, I don't have to be sitting on a couch, And so that burden started falling on Steph and I, and we prayed about it. We really felt, I went there and prayed and really felt that God was calling us there. But the next step was to talk to my pastor, because we weren't going to be going as a home mission church. We were going to be going as a daughter church. We'd want to go through the Pentecostals of Sydney. So is this a financial thing that you want to take on? Is this part of the vision of the Pentecostals of Sydney? Because the giving is going to be going to help start this. And pastor prayed about it, and he felt that it was the will of God. And obviously he had to be mindful of Steph and I because we're heavily involved in POS. So he didn't want to, he has that pastoral care duty, and he checks in on us quite frequently, seeing how we're going with all of that. But that's really how it got started. And then I knew that it was going to be a challenge, living an hour and a half away from it, and knowing that we don't have anyone there. So we had to build a team. And so I started praying about who was going to be on the team, and I approached people specifically with pastors' permission, specifically asking them and being upfront. This is the commitment level we need. And if you can't do this, that's fine, and we'll build the team with others. But thankfully, a whole number of them said yes, and a number of them are still involved over 2 years into the process. A number of them are coming every week still as volunteers. We have people who have transitioned to once a fortnight, once a month. Any help is amazing. But over 2 years, a lot of our volunteer base is now from the Central Coast, which is amazing because the church is between 30 and 40 now of locals. And then we have our volunteers from POS who come as well.
That's amazing.
When you're telling the story of how this really, the genesis of this question comes to my mind is like, how did the church, the Pentecostals of Sydney, how did they respond? Like, what was the vision cast to that church? I know you went to some individually, but obviously, there is some type of news or announcement. Just curious, what was that like?
Well, Pastor has had a vision for a number of years to start churches. So POS has started all of the churches. Well, the Pentecostal of Sydney is technically the first church in Australia. So it was the main church that was started in the 1950s by Brother Glenn Bogue. And so I guess technically all of the churches have come out of that church. But, let's say the last 20 or so years, 30 years, they've planted a number of churches around Sydney. And then Pastor's always had that vision since 2010 all the way through to start planting more churches. We had 2 daughter works for a while. One went autonomous, so we had 1 daughter church, and the vision was still there. And so we were just coming alongside that vision that had already been cast, constantly talking about it. We want to plant churches. We want to plant churches in Sydney. And now, come January, we're about to plant our 5th church in the last 2.5 years. Wow. And so we helped kickstart that, which is, praise God. But there was another family that made a much bigger sacrifice. They moved 5 hours away to help, to plant a church in Mudgee, which is another great campus church or daughter church of the Pentecostals of Sydney. And so when people hear our story, they're like, oh, that's amazing. And then I try to highlight that couple because they left. It's a lot harder to leave than it is to do the travel that we do. They relocated. They're 5 hours away. They come down quite frequently. They're involved in a lot of our stuff. But that happened at like the same time. They went, and then we started that. And people started seeing the sacrifice. And then the church itself has continued to sacrifice. And you can see it. You can see it in the leadership. You can see it in a lot of the younger people. They want to be involved. They want to serve. It's a great spot for people to first get involved in more forward-facing ministry. And so, it's been amazing. The Pentecostal City is a phenomenal church. And my pastor is incredible. Anything that you say about me, I'm just, we're just a reflection of him and of that church.
Tell me one of your, I love this conversation about this and the sacrifice that you and your family are making. Tell me a recent win that you would love to tell our audience.
Oh my goodness.
I know you have it stacked up.
I mean, I got like 30. I'd say the biggest one would be my daughter. She received the Holy Ghost at our Turning Point conference, and she was baptized that weekend. And one of the things my wife shares is testimony about this fear that she had, not necessarily fear, but this concern. I would say concern. I don't want to say fear because it wasn't that, but it was a concern about the kids. And that was the first question everyone would ask us. Oh, what are you gonna do about the kids if you're doing this? And I remember, I'm not name dropping, but I remember reaching out to Brother Hunley because of the sacrifices that they made. And he goes, and he talked about how he actually talked about it on the podcast that I recorded with him. So that's a plug for me to check that one out. It's a great episode. But he talked about why, don't be concerned about the kids. They'll grow with you. Take that step. If you're doing it within the will of God, they'll grow with you. But anyway, she had this concern about the kids, and we had a youth conference where the preacher just felt during an altar call service, my wife and I were praying together on altar call service, and he just felt a prophetic word. And he said, there's a young couple here that's looking to start a church in an unchurched area. It's never had an apostolic witness, and they're concerned about their family. Don't be concerned. Your children, God will protect your children. Don't be concerned. I mean, that's a direct word.
Wow.
And we were already praying about it. He had no idea what we were praying about. We told him later. He's friends of ours, and he's like, when I saw you guys, I could tell it was you, but I didn't want to say it.
Yeah.
And that was a blessing to him for his ministry. But
Sure.
my daughter is a huge part of our work at POCC, Ava. She goes with me every Wednesday for our Bible study. I go up on Wednesday for Bible study, small group, and then we have our services on Sundays. She gets upset with us when we miss. She's like, I want to be there. Why are we missing POCC? And she's got friends there. God moved a family there to help us, the Aristocki family. They're an incredible family. And one of her best friends is their son. And so she got the Holy Ghost. She got baptized, Turning Point weekend. And this year, in 2025, we've had 5 of our kids at POCC get baptized, which is amazing. So, yeah, God is doing the work. God is doing the work.
When you're telling this, what's coming to my mind is like, okay, what's working? Let me put some context to the question. You and I were talking last night and about the big church, the mother church, Pentecostals of Sydney, about what really is being the thing that's working to grow your church. And you were talking about Bible studies. You and I got into that. There's a 20-week Bible study you guys do. And those that go through it, man, they stay. There's just a health, and there's real numbers that associate with those wins. What is working in this new church? Like, what are you doing that is working, that you, maybe even something that is surprising that is working?
I wish I knew exactly what was working.
Yeah.
We're doing a really good job, I think, of investing in the congregants there, the ones that are newish. We're not keeping them away from ministry too soon. We're not keeping them away for too long, right? We're not saying you have to wait 6 months before you're involved in stuff. And so we're trying to make it a part of who they are, that serving is part of what they do, but that the church that it's their church. We talked recently, this is, I guess, inspired by you. You were talking at our leaders retreat, and you were talking about this. I was writing notes, a mile a minute while you were teaching. And you talked about how you guys do a family month here. And so we decided to do a family month at POCC. And in one of those, we talked about foundational families. And we had a number of our families grab a hold of that vision, that they want to be a foundational family to the work. That whether I'm there, Steph's there long term, that they're going to be part of growing that church. So I think we've really tried to invest in that. I've really tried to invest in teaching, the teaching aspect. I'm not quick to say necessarily what's working. I would like one of them to come on and tell you exactly what they see that's working and what may not be working. But yeah, we really try and empower them, those who are part of POCC from the Central Coast area, and try and develop leaders from POS who are involved, empower them, try and get them. I don't want it to be a one-man show, right? I can't be everything for everybody, especially because of where we live, based on where the church is. I can't be that. And so what I've really tried to do is empower the people that are around us, and so they're not just looking at me for everything. I'm not the hero. I'm the one that's here helping start the work. You're part of something bigger. You're part of the Pentecostals of Sydney. I make sure that they know that we're not building a kingdom there. We're trying to expand what God is doing in Sydney, what God is doing through the Pentecostals of Sydney. And so we want them to feel part of that. We take every opportunity to get other people from Sydney to come up so that they can see we're part of a bigger church. We're not by ourselves, and grab a hold of that vision. And when pastor comes and he ministers, I make sure they know this is the pastor of the Pentecostals of Sydney. I'm your campus pastor, and so we're under spiritual authority. We're not building our own kingdom. We're not doing our own thing. We're part of the Pentecostals of Sydney. We're part of the vision that God has given the man of God, Pastor Stan Harvey, and we're just here to see that grow, to see that develop here on the Central Coast.
Man, that's the model.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, like that. There's been so many, and I mean, I'm 41 years old, known about home missions, back in the day, home missions, now North American missions, all that. So many people have felt a call to go into a city, a God-given call, but they did not have the tools, the resources, for different reasons. Maybe it was because they weren't connected to another church. Maybe it was because they didn't want to do it that way for whatever reason. But what the model that you're describing, where your family is able to stay healthy because you've stayed connected to a great, thriving church, there's people that God has developed and raised up within POS that's now able to go beyond that church and minister and see wins 90 minutes away. You stayed connected. I'm telling you, and I know it doesn't always work that way. I know that is a scenario and that's working, but I'm telling you, as much, it feels like, I would think, as much as you can use this model, if somebody's listening to this and they're feeling, that they're going to plant a church one day, like that to me is the model. That's the playbook.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it takes all the pressure off of the family that's stepping out to start the work. We felt the call, we felt the burden. We have that burden, but we want to share that burden with others. We want others to feel that burden as well. And the Pentecostals of Sydney feel that burden. They feel the burden for Sydney. They feel the burden for the areas that they can reach. And a lot of that goes through the ministry of the word, how pastor communicates it. But if you're able to go with a team, if that is a possibility, that is the best way to go, because you can't be everything for everybody. You just can't. And you can try, and you're going to spend a couple of years trying to build up a team who can start being that team that's going to help you really grow the church. But if you have the luxury, if you have the ability to have that team from the jump, and there's people that you can look to, there's people that have a sound experience, there's people that have music experience. My wife, obviously, we're blessed with amazing worship at POCC because of my wife. But
awesome.
But beyond that, we have other churches that have started, and it's basically the same model. We send a team out. We make sure that the pastor doesn't feel like they're by themselves. The pastoral family isn't by themselves.
Yeah.
They got people helping them, supporting them. And we don't just walk away after a year. There's no timeline. It's not like, okay, at 2 years, people are going to stop coming, because we're not threatened by that. I'm saying we, but I feel like I can speak from the pastoral team at the Pentecostals of Sydney, that because I'm on the staff meetings, I'm involved in all of that, that they're not threatened by the campus churches. It's a outgrowth of the church. It's the same church.
So cool.
That is so good, isn't it? It's so insightful. Greg, there's so many things that you do. We mentioned your podcast as well. And again, you're leveraging that not only just as a personal extension of what God's doing through you and personal interest, but you've sharing yourself with the world. And I know there's a lot of people that lean in and just listen. And I want to thank you for investing, not just in your local area. You're investing globally, and that's exciting. Any takeaways from your podcast? You're 200 episodes in. Any takeaways you're learning from that?
We have great leaders in the apostolic movement. We have phenomenal leaders that want to share. They want to connect. They want to impart.
Yeah, they do.
And they're just looking for a way that they can.
Right.
And some of these are elders that really don't have that ability. They don't know that this, many of them didn't know that this medium even exists. A lot of them are hopping on it now, which is awesome. I love it. I don't look at it as competition. I look at it as amen. And I share their stuff, and I make sure that people are aware of these other podcasts, because my podcast isn't a personality thing. Like, I'm not Joe Rogan here. You're not
right.
It's grown because of the guests I've been blessed to have on. And, God's given me a bit of an ability to have these conversations. I think hopefully over 200 episodes, I've gotten a bit better at having them. It's harder sitting on this side, I would say, especially because I don't have a lot of experience on this side of the conversation. I'm typically the one asking the questions.
Right.
And then
You're doing great. Yeah. You're doing a great job.
I'll let you know when I listen back to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have tremendous leaders that want to share, that want to impart, that want to bless the church in so many different ways. And you're part of a huge body, a diverse body. You're part of a huge movement that spans the globe. And I think that's what I've been able to show from a unique perspective, because I am based in Australia. And so I shared a lot of stories from people in Australia. I also shared stories from people in New Zealand, from Singapore, from Indonesia, and then, in Europe, all throughout the United States, what God's doing in global missions, what God's doing in North American missions, what God's doing in Australia. That's probably my biggest takeaway, is that there are wonderful leaders that are willing to share, who have gone through the journey, who have faced the battles, who have gone before us, that are able to impart. So I would say just be open to what they have to say, listen to them, learn from their wisdom, learn from what they have to say, and you're going to be a lot better for it.
Yeah. I want to encourage our listeners. Obviously, you're listening to a podcast, but listen to Hack podcast, just because you're going to learn, you're going to get better. And this is really a way a lot of us are learning today, just constantly being fed and challenged by great leaders, great men and women of God that are just doing things that are imparting into my spirit, your spirit, and certainly that's what you have done. Billy, any thoughts?
Like, we're sitting here with the guy, right?
The guy.
So I want you to do one thing before, because we're about to wrap up. This whole digital side, as a digital guru yourself, I want you to convince me and Pastor, as if we're opposed to it. Okay, not that we are, not at all. But I want you to convince us why the church should be more focused on digital media, digital outreach, socials, podcast, all that stuff. Why we should be video in this podcast. That was a plug, right? Sell us.
Well, I would say, it's not the future, it's already here, right? That's the way that Gen Z is learning. They're not learning by going to CNN. They're not going to Fox News. They're going to X. They're going to TikTok. They're going to Instagram. That's how they're getting their news. That's how they're learning. So many people, they're learning through YouTube videos, so on and so forth. And so that's where the people are at. We can decry the amount of screen time that people have, and we should encourage them not to spend that much time on their screen. And again, I'm talking to people who are not yet in the church, right? Sure. But they're there. And if they're there, then we should be trying to meet them where they're at, not where they're not. It's like, oh, we're not going to be online. We're just going to be, counterculture, and we're just going to meet in our church.
Right.
Well, that's going to be a blessing to the people already in your church, but no one's going to find you outside the church. I can't remember the last restaurant I went to that I just saw it on the side of the road and went to it. I don't know anyone who does that.
Right.
Anyone under 40 is not doing that.
Yeah.
So, you might reach a lot of baby boomers, but you're probably not, and you might reach some Gen X, but you're definitely not going to reach millennials, and you're not going to reach Gen Z or Gen Alpha. So they're already there. That's where they're at. And I think as best we can, we need to try and reach them where they're at. We need to try and do our best, whether it's through a 60-second clip, whether it's through an hour-long conversation, try and meet them where they're at, because that's where they are.
So I agree with all of that. I'm sold, by the way. Yeah, I'm sold.
No question.
I'm buying that. So that the average listener of our podcast, or people in our church, volunteers, some have, influence in what we do, through digital ministry here. Some that's not their deal, but almost everyone is on some type of social platform, involved in some type of digital form of social media, whatever. So how would you encourage listeners here on Between Sundays to leverage their digital footprint for kingdom purposes?
Well, if you're a creator, or if you're involved in what the church is doing here, this is what I say to our team at the Pentecostals of Sydney. I remind them that you are part of getting the gospel outside the four walls of this church. Now, a lot of us can do that verbally through conversation. We can do that in our small groups if we have follow-up conversations each week about what was taught on the Sunday. That's a way of getting it out. But the easiest way to get it out in 2025 is through a live stream. It's through social content. It's through that sort of thing. And what you're doing is you're getting the gospel outside the four walls of the church, and you're reaching people that pastor will never be able to reach by himself. They're going to be able to, like, for example, we have had testimonies shared on the Pentecostals of Sydney. The most recent example is we had a guy who shared this powerful testimony of what he went through, what he and his wife went through. It's incredible. He's of Tongan ethnicity, and he was wearing traditional Tongan apparel, which caught people's attention, I guess, when they were looking at it on socials. He has a powerful testimony. It was a 5-minute thing on our Father's Day service. Pastor likes to get 2 guys up every Father's Day before the speaker to share a short testimony. He shared a 5-minute testimony that impacted the room 100%. It was powerful. There's probably close to 400 people in the room that were impacted by that. That clip, we took that, threw it on Facebook, threw it on Instagram, on TikTok. It's been seen by over 400,000 people.
Wow.
They weren't in the building. They weren't in the room. It's gone all throughout the Tongan community in Sydney, even across into Tonga, into the Tongan community in America as well. So many of them commenting on it, so many of them sharing it, and so on and so forth. All they did was just clip it, throw a little script on it. It was not a lot of work, but they were able to get that testimony out of the room that was ministering to 400, and now it's ministering to 400,000 people. And who knows where that's going to go?
Yeah.
But what's the parable say? We're commanded to sow the seed.
Mm.
It's not our responsibility to determine the ground. It's not our responsibility to, some of us have been tasked to kind of work the ground, I guess, from our pastoral duties. But when it comes to sharing the gospel, when it comes to sowing the seed, it's not, Jesus told us to sow the seed. And that's what you do through socials. That's what we have the opportunity to do. So you can do that through creating the content, helping capture it and create it. You can do that through sharing it personally on your page, through your story, through messages, repost it, so on and so forth. But I had a young lady on the podcast just most recently on mine. She's the social media director for Revival Church, and she talked about how that they talk about being digital disciples.
Yep.
And taking that mindset to
so good
to the digital space.
Yep.
I love it. Well, man, this has been so good, and we probably have about 55 other questions. So we're going to go to dinner after this, I think, and continue the conversation. But man, thank you for your time, for being a part of this. We're super excited to have you with us this weekend, and our listeners being able to have you part of the podcast has been amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say thank you, Greg. You could have went anywhere. You're in the United States. You could have went anywhere, and you chose to come here. That means a lot. And to have this experience with you and to know you and your heart, just a great privilege and blessing. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's been my honor, and we've been looking forward to being with this church and experiencing worship, and we're really looking forward to Sunday and enjoying worship with the church. We've so many great things. My mother-in-law's been here, and so we thought, well, it's about time that we make it. But this has been such an honor.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed having this conversation with you guys.
Well, you keep talking like that. We're just going to let it keep rolling. Yeah, we got more time. Well, if you're a listener, Greg, every episode we end by sharing one of our volunteers' favorite Bible verses. And so, Pastor, why don't you tell them who's our volunteer today?
Thankful for all of our volunteers. And we just could not do what we are called to do without you. And so if you serve, and we want to say thank you for that. And so we try to highlight one special volunteer every episode. And so this episode, we're going to highlight Sister Jordan Kellogg. Want to say thank you, Jordan. She helps with a lot of different ministries. She helps in our tech department. She runs a camera. She also helps in Promise Kids. She helps lead in that area as well. But just an incredible young lady of God in college and living out her faith on a college campus, has a great destiny. Jordan, we want to say thank you. Your favorite verse is 1 John 4, verse 18, and it reads like this: "There is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear, because fear hath torment. He hath feareth is not made perfect in love." Jordan, thank you. Thank you so very much. We appreciate you so very much in all you do.
Appreciate you, Jordan. And listen, if you're new to Between Sundays, listen, we drop an episode every fortnight.
Fortnite?
Yeah, you didn't. You
I
didn't know,
caught that, but I was just kind of figuring.
you didn't know what it was.
Tell me.
Pastor, you've been to Australia like 72 times.
I know, but he had to tell me last night, so tell me again.
Fortnite is 2 weeks.
Okay.
So every fortnight we drop a new episode. So make sure you catch that wherever you listen to podcasts. Greg, thank you so much. Thank you guys for listening to this episode of Between Sundays. We'll catch you in Fortnite.